hasn't even officially released the book yet. That's just 5,000 in pre-sales. But just from the pre-sales and her messaging and how she positioned herself alone, she's already gotten bulk book orders from universities, speaking engagements, requests to speak and do presentations in different medical programs in several colleges and universities. So I'm going to say that it's not about the audience size. It's all about your messaging, your positioning, and what you do with the book once you actually release it.
What does it take to successfully self-publish your own book? By successfully, I mean thousands of dollars in book sales, landing new clients, and booking speaking engagements. Hi there, it's Sewa, and welcome to another episode of the She's Off Script podcast. For today's episode, we meet the six-figure self-publishing coach, Jasmine Womack. She's going to walk us through A to Z. How do you go from writing your own book to self-publishing it and then also marketing it so that it doesn't fall flat when you finally release it on Amazon or wherever you're selling it. And she is going to walk us through where to sell it as well. Before we dive into the conversation, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next episode. We release new ones every Thursday in both audio and video format. All right, let's jump into it.
Jasmine Womack, welcome to She's Off Script. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Sewa. I am so excited for our chat today.
Same here. But for anyone who hasn't come across you before, could you share who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So my name is the Jasmine Womack. My clients and students call me the six-figure storyteller. I help coaches, consultants, speakers, agency owners, and professional service providers write, self-publish, and launch books that grow and scale their businesses. So that's what we do. Help you to write a book, teach you the whole entire self-publishing process, and help you to set up marketing and launch systems so that your book is actually feeding your back-end authors. So you can take that $19 or $25 book and turn it into premium price services and clients. So yeah, that's what we do.
I can't wait to dive into all of that. But I have heard you saying that writing a book is a good way to establish authority, both as a working professional, people with 9-to-5s, and as an entrepreneur. Now, I've seen entrepreneurs writing and self-publishing books before, but not so much people who have 9-to-5. So for those of your clients that do have a 9-to-5 and have worked with you to self-publish their books, what would you say have been some of the benefits for their careers?
Absolutely. So when I wrote my first book, I was still working a 9-to-5. And believe it or not, most of my clients now still work a 9-to-5, but they were they were coaching on the side. So they identified, they identified with some sort of entrepreneurial endeavor, like I always share my background and how I got started in network marketing, even though I was never successful in it. But I always, even though I was teaching, when I was teaching, I had the drive and the desire to have my own business. And so I find that many of my clients, although they do have 9-to-5s, they've always had some type of side hustle or other endeavor going on. So definitely as a professional, as a corporate professional, you're still, working your 9-to-5. It helps to establish your credibility and helps you to build your personal brand outside of your identity at your job. So it allows you to package what you know and package what you've done over the years in your leadership, over the years in your experience, over the years in showing up every day and arriving early, staying late, bending over backwards, all of the things, and actually using your expertise, in a way that positions you as a thought leader, because you can say, literally, I know this because not only have I done it, but I've literally written a book about it. And so it positions you to go out and use your knowledge, use your background, use your training in a way that benefits you and not just the organization that you work for.
I love that. And I think it is important to establish that identity outside of what you do for work, because we all know it can be unstable and you want to have something to fall back on outside of your 9-to-5. But I know for people listening, they're probably skeptical about self-publishing. It probably doesn't feel as legitimate to them as, being tapped by a Penguin, Random House, all those big names. So could you share with us, perhaps, what are some of the mistakes that people are making when they self-publish books that are causing them to have these lackluster results?
Absolutely. And that's a great question. So I am a big proponent of self-publishing. And one of the reasons why I got into self-publishing is because I knew that I didn't want a middleman. I had friends that went the traditional route. I've had colleagues that have gone the traditional route, and there's always been red tape. There's always been some type of restrictions when it came to, basically signing over your intellectual property, to be up under a traditional publisher. And I found that although my colleagues and some of my friends went a traditional publishing route, they still had to market their books themselves. So I'm like, if I have to still do all the work to market and promote and do all the things, that I want to keep all of the royalties without having to pay anyone. So some of the biggest mistakes that people make when it comes to self-publishing is, number one, having an ambiguous title. So you're making your title something that you want, you're titling your book something that you want to title it, or something that you think is a good idea, without doing your market research and without taking your reader into consideration or account. So you're titling it one thing because that appeals to you, but you have to understand that you're not writing the book for yourself. You're writing the book for a specific person to help them get a result. And so your title and your subtitle need to be very clear. It needs to be concise, and it needs to be attention grabbing, so that once someone reads your title and subtitle, they're able to know what your book is about and what they're going to learn by the end of your book, and what they're going to get out of the book, out of reading the book. They should know that. And your title and subtitle do not have to be long in order to communicate that. The second biggest mistake that I see many people make when it comes to self-publishing a book is having, I'm just going to use my urban vernacular here.
Please do.
cheap or janky looking product. Like, and I'm pretty sure that if those of you all who are listening, you've probably seen someone self-publish a book and it just did not look good. It looked amateur. It looked cheap. Like, you should go into the bookstore, or you should browse Amazon and look for traditionally published books that are related to your industry, related to your topic, and look at the details. Most will have no more than 3 fonts and maybe 2 main colors. So if you have a book cover with tons of different fonts, images that are not appealing, or some type of image that does not symbolize the topic or theme of your book, and the design and the colors are all over the place, I mean, that alone is going to kill your conversions, and it's definitely not going to position you as an authority in your industry, because you're saying, listen, I know this topic, but this is the type of product I'm putting out. Like, you have to put out a product that looks the level that you want to be perceived.
Amen. Because we're so visual, and you have seconds to capture someone's attention. And if it looks off, I'm going to assume that whatever is inside the book is also off. But I have to ask there, and then we can continue with the list. How much money am I going to spend on looking or getting a book cover that looks like something that has the backing of a traditional publisher? I mean, am I going to have to get a makeup artist, get my hair done, photographer, what am I doing? Graphic designer? How much is this going to run me?
So you don't need a photographer, because your picture doesn't need to be on the front of the book. Now, you can include your picture on the back of the book in a short about the author section, but you don't have to put your picture on the front. A lot of people delay the release of their books because they feel like they have to have this elaborate photo shoot. And I'm like, no, just put the book cover out. And to be honest, you can spend anywhere from $30 to $100 to get a quality, crisp book cover. Now I'm going to say this. You can go to a gig site such as Fiverr.com or Upwork.com and find a designer that specializes in book covers for speakers, for coaches, for authors, because they do have a certain look to them. And it does need to be clean, clear, crisp, and concise. All right. However, it's also important to know that when you use a gig site, it's many of those designers use templates because they'll have orders coming in from all over the world. Everyone has access to them. And so in order to be able to handle the influx of orders that they may have, many of them use templates. They just may change out some of the colors. So what this means is that your cover may look like someone else's. If you don't search for it, you won't know. Okay. So I do always hire a private designer to design my covers. A private designer that has experience may range you anywhere from $300 on the low end up to about $1,500 on the high end. All right. However, I have used some of the designers on Fiverr before just to test them out to see what I could get. I have a good friend of mine. She has her she had her book cover designed by a gig artist on Fiverr. She's a doctor, and she had her cover designed by an artist on Fiverr. And she doesn't sell her book online, but she makes tens of thousands of dollars in book sales every month because she couples her books in with her speaking engagements. So she doesn't care about any of that. She's still making money off of a book cover that costs her $50 to get made. So, it just really depends on where your focus is and are you going to put the work in to get the return that you desire?
The return, that is the key. And we're going to talk about that because I know for yourself, you were able to make $235,000 in book sales in 1 week. So I definitely want to dive into how you were able to do that. But go on. I'll let you continue with your list of mistakes people make.
Okay. So I think we talked about the title and we talked about the
looking janky
cover design, looking janky. The third mistake, and this will be the last one. The third mistake is the back cover synopsis. So the synopsis is the book description that goes on the back of the book. I've seen so many independent authors create a paragraph, and it's literally one solid paragraph, no breaks, no anything. And that, again, is not how a synopsis should be structured. So oftentimes when people look at a book, or if they're considering whether or not they want to purchase a book, they're going to look at the front cover, then they're going to look at the back cover and kind of get an overview of what the book is about. All right. So your book should have the synopsis has actually several different parts to it. It should have a heading. It should have an introduction where you're asking some questions to see, is this person an ideal reader for this book? Have you ever experienced this? Have you ever wondered this? If so, in this book, author such and such is sharing his or her story about how they overcame and got this result. And then you share your 3 to 5 bulleted points of what the reader will learn in your book. And then you have a closing. That's how your synopsis should be structured. You're not telling your whole entire life story on the back of the book. And
not about you.
And it definitely should not be just one long paragraph where you're rambling. All right. So it definitely needs to have structure to it. And you also need a 1 to 2 sentence about the author section at the end. So to just give people a little bit of information about you and where they can go to learn a little bit more.
Okay. So if people are listening to this and they've already been thinking and researching about actually self-publishing their own books, I've heard you say that there are 5 phases to the writing process. I would argue that the 6th should be marketing, but you will let us know. So could you walk us through those 5 phases and how we should be approaching them as we're self-publishing our own books?
Absolutely. So when I say 5 phases to the writing process, that's coming from my language arts background,
Yeah.
because that's strictly writing. There is a marketing process, and marketing the book has to be done in conjunction with the writing process. It's not a separate phase. It happens concurrently and at the same time.
So walk us through it.
So the first phase of the writing process is planning, or what we used to call pre-writing. This is where you actually create your draft. You should not ever sit down at a computer and just start writing off of the top of your head. You need to know exactly what you're writing about, the topics that you're going to cover in your book, even down to the types of experiences and stories that you're going to share in your book, and what the purpose of that is. So I think that when it comes to writing, particularly independent authors tend to just write whatever comes to the top of their head. And it's just like, you can't share that. Even if you want to share a story or share a personal experience, there has to be a purpose to it. So does this story that you're sharing, does this particular instance that you're sharing, does it align with the overall goal? And is it going to help the reader get to where they're trying to get to by the time you finish? If not, then it's probably extraneous detail and you might need to leave it out, right? But that's something that you won't notice if you don't take the time to plan. So you definitely need to plan your writing. This is a lot more detailed than just writing 10 things you want to talk about and then start writing. Okay. So that's the planning process. Then you have the planning. Then you have the drafting process.
Okay.
This is where you write your first draft. A lot of times writers get caught up because they try to treat their first draft as their final draft, and it's not. Your first draft is just that. It's a brain dump. It's you getting all of your ideas out. It's not supposed to be perfect. It's not supposed to sound perfect. Your job as the writer is to write. Get it all out. Don't worry about it being perfect. Don't worry about trying to make it sound a certain way. That doesn't matter in the drafting process, in the drafting phase, okay? So step 1 is the planning. Step 2 is the drafting. This is where you use your outline to literally draft your paper and get all of your ideas out in some type of format, okay? Stage 3 is editing. So this is where you send it off to an editor. This is not where you go and try to reread it and try to perfect it or redo anything. No, you brain dump and get your ideas out, and then you give it to an editor.
Okay? Not you, someone else.
No, you give it to an editor.
Now, is this your girlfriend, your mom? Who's the editor? Or are they on Fiverr? Who are we asking to edit the book?
I honestly, I use professional editors. These are people who have experience editing nonfiction books. All editors are not created equal. So there are editors that specialize in creative writing, in editing creative-based books, like editing fiction books, editing urban fiction, editing, those types of books that are really for entertainment. Then you have some editors that specialize in academia. So they may specialize in the research, the annotation, the citations, like that's what they do when it comes to research papers, dissertations, all the white papers, all those types of things. Then you have editors who are specialized in editing nonfiction, particularly, in my industry, books that are self-help, inspirational books, books that are business books, how-to books, informational books. Okay, so it really depends on the type of book that you're trying to write. You need to seek out an editor who has some type of experience editing that, because the editing will differ. The voice will differ as well. I don't ask anyone personally that I know, not in my immediate family. Okay. Now, when I had my first book edited, I was teaching, which meant that I was surrounded by language arts teachers who taught writing and who had to edit on a daily basis. They had to edit narratives and persuasive. We had to edit papers. So I'm like, who in this building can I ask to edit this book? Because I know from working with them, and we used to sit down and edit and grade all the time. Who can I ask in this building to edit for me?
Start where you are.
And at the time, I found out that my assistant principal was offering professional editing services on the side. That was one of his side hustles. I said, oh, I have a book. Can you edit it for me? And so at the time, my assistant principal took on my book as one of his outside of work professional editing project. And I just found it out just a random conversation. So if you have access to teachers, or if you know teachers, language arts teachers or professors, not math teachers, not science teachers, because a lot of them are not good in writing. Teachers who teach English or language arts, a lot of them do that type of work on the side because they're already doing it, for their work anyway.
Right.
So I would definitely tell you to start there on the low end. And some people use Fiverr. They do have editors on Fiverr. I've used Fiverr for proofreading, but not for final editing. And just because of my industry, I've been blessed to, meet a lot of different editors just throughout the years. But definitely, I think Instagram now is a great tool for editors. There are so many that I connect with, and they provide professional services. But there are questions that you need to ask to vet the editor that you choose. Okay. So I have a list of those questions in my book, Published and Paid. Some of the questions should definitely be: how long have you been editing? What type of experience do you have? What's the investment amount? What's the turnaround time? When can I expect my edits back? What type of credit or reimbursement will I be given if I do not receive my edits back when you tell me I will get them back? Do you have any type of a refund clause if I'm dissatisfied with the edits? Those type of questions. And also ask to see a sample edit. So they should have a sample of an edit that they've done for another book, or you can have them to say, hey, here's one paragraph of my book. Can you do a sample, not a page, not a chapter, one paragraph? Can you do a sample edit of this paragraph? Because you want to see their work. You want to see how they respond, and what that experience is going to look like and feel like, and whether or not you align with their style of editing.
Yep.
So those are some questions that you can ask.
Oh my gosh. So we're definitely going to need to delve into your book. So was that all of the writing process? So editing, after editing, revision and publishing, right?
So it was planning, drafting, and then it was editing. Step four is revision. All right. So the revision process, it comes after editing. I'm sorry, I got
no, that's fine.
I turns around, it's revision and then editing.
Oh, okay.
But you should still have something. Revision and editing go back and forth. I will say this because after you have your book edited, you still have to go back through and check the edits. The editor's comments are not the final edit. So for me, even when I get an editor to edit my books, I'm going to go back and review their edits and make changes. So the editing and revision process, there's a back and forth between stages 3 and 4. So whether you edit and revise, edit, revision is where you look over your own work. Editing is where you give someone else the opportunity to look over it. I say editing comes first, because if you start revising your book first and start looking over your own writing, you could get stuck. You could start reading it, feeling like it's not good enough, getting caught in your head, and start trying to rewrite all of this content, which is why I always say, listen, after you do your brain dump, send it to an editor, let them edit it, then you go in and revise it. You use their statements, you use their guidelines, you use their feedback to make the corrections, and then you can go in and add what you may need to add, change what you may need to change. So revision is where you go in to make the changes that you need to make. And the editing and revision, again, is back and forth. You may go through several rounds of this where you edit, where they edit, you revise, you send it back to them to review it again. Then they'll go through it again. They'll send it back to you. Hey, I still found these, and they'll leave some updates, and until you feel like, okay, I'm ready now. So for me, I personally go through 3 to 4 rounds of edits.
Ooh,
right. So because I like to make sure that my book is clean. So I'll do it electronically first, probably about 2 rounds. Then I'll print it off, because when you print your book off, your eyes are physically able to see things that you're not able, that they may not catch on screen. So then I'll do the 3rd edit on paper. I'll do the 3rd revision on paper, go through and look at it, change it, make changes, go in and make those updates on the digital copy, and then send that final one back to the editor for one final review.
Okay.
And
so then now we publish. I mean, this is sounding like quite a process. I think I'd seen that one of your clients actually wrote her book in 48 hours and then published within 8 weeks. So I want to understand really how those timelines typically work, but I'll let you get to the last step.
Yeah, and then there's the publishing process. So the publishing process is probably the easiest part, because you've done the hard work. So now the publishing process is where you publish the book. You publish the book. You have the interior laid out. The book cover's already been designed, because as you've been waiting on the edits, you're getting your book cover design and all of that. So that's why I said marketing runs along. It runs in parallel to the publishing process, because while you are going through the process of the edits and things, there are going to be time lapses where the editor has your book, you don't have it. You need to be marketing and promoting.
Well, I do want to dive into the marketing piece. Specifically, what was your process for the 235K sales in 1 week? But where are we publishing the books? Where do we get the most bang for our investment? Is it Amazon still, or are there other places that are better these days for independent book publishers or writers?
I sell my book directly. Now I have my book on Kindle, and I do have another book on Audible and one that's available for paperback on Amazon. But I think it's important to put it on Amazon, because Amazon is a search engine. And oftentimes when you tell people that you're an author, the first place they're going to run is Amazon. And it's almost like if your book isn't there,
is it
you're
even
not
real?
a real author, right? In the eyes of how people perceive it. So at the very least, have your book available in the Kindle ebook format. But I sell my books, my paperbacks, from my website, because I'm able to keep most of those. I'm able to keep most of the profit from it. And I'm also able to do other things like offer upsells immediately. The only thing about selling from my website is that I have to generate traffic and drive traffic to my site to do that.
Hello, marketing. So what is your process for then getting or raising awareness for your book?
Being findable. I got that phrase from Myron Golden last week, because I've always said you have to show up. He said being findable. I said, I'm going to use that. So you have to get out of your shell. You can't say, I wrote a book and you're the only person who knows about the book. If you're the only person who knows about the book and no one's buying it or no one's reading it, then you're not making impact. So you have to create content to be findable. Yes, you're going to have to create videos. Yes, you're going to have to post. You're going to have to share information about your book. You're going to have to, and that goes beyond just saying I have a book. This goes behind your motivation. This goes into your motivations. Like, why did you write the book? Who is this book for? How is it going to help them? sharing some snippets and excerpts from your book and going into detail about that snippet and excerpt and what it means, or what inspired you to write it. You can use the caption spaces for that. Creating quick, like literally using your cell phone to create quick videos, where you are talking about the book. You're, reposting testimonials. When people purchase your book and they tag you, you repost them and say, thank you for buying my book. Like consumers are bandwagoners. So consumers buy things that they see other people buying. So you have to share testimonials. You have to share when people buy your book. If you're out at speaking engagement or you're out selling, or someone purchases a copy of your book directly from you, take a picture with them, post it. You have to be visible. I find that a lot of authors struggle with marketing.
Well,
because they
I have to ask
out there.
I have to ask, how big was your audience when you were able to generate that much in sales? Because if I'm a new author, new business owner, my audience may not be that big. So who am I reposting to? 10 people, 100 people? How am I going to generate that many sales? So what would you suggest for someone who is still new but has the expertise?
All right, so that's a great question. So at this point in my career, or my profession, I have an audience of 15,000 on Instagram. When I had that launch, that was back in January, February, I had probably around 12,000, maybe 12 or 13.
Now I'm still like, how? Because typically conversion rates are 2 to 5% on the high end. Yeah, so what was that?
You have to know what you're doing. But when I first started, my follower list was under 1,000, and I had a $5,000 book launch, and that was 5 years ago. Okay. And so I teach what I know to my students. So that's why, like how now, like today, I just posted one of my students. She just released her book, I Wear a White Coat by Dr. Erica Hollick. It's a book written by Black authors, by Black doctors, where they're talking about their journeys through medical school and the things that they encountered and how they overcame it to get the white coat, to get their doctor, whether it's a doctor, pharmacy, therapist, whatnot. And so she's a pharmacist, and she didn't have an audience like that. Like, she had a private account, and literally using the strategies that we shared in the first 2 weeks of her launch, she's made $5,000. And so now she's going on to build out her back-end systems so she can explode that. But in addition to just her pre-sale, she hasn't even officially released the book yet. That's just 5,000 in pre-sales. But just from the pre-sales and her messaging and how she positioned herself alone, she's already gotten bulk book orders from universities, speaking engagements and stuff, requests to speak and do presentations at different medical programs in several colleges and universities. So I'm going to say that it's not about the audience size. It's all about your messaging, your positioning, and what you do with the book once you actually release it, how you're able to communicate the value. Again, her book hasn't even come out yet, and she's already having these opportunities.
That's because she was talking about her book throughout the process. She was marketing, as you said, in parallel with actually creating the book. And I think that's something that rings true for any project, is if you spring it on people and say, surprise, you haven't warmed them up enough.
Exactly.
And they're not going to be ready to pull out their wallets, especially if they don't know who you are. So it's important, it sounds like, to be doing the work of speaking about what you are doing as you are doing it.
Absolutely. And it's also, again, the positioning, which comes with her title, her book cover, design, everything. So, there's no question about what she's talking about, because when people see the book cover, they know exactly what it is. And she has the credentials to match because she's a pharmacist.
She's an expert. Write about your expertise.
And she's been doing the work of pharmacy now for almost 20 years. So, yeah, well, not 20 years in the profession, but because of course she had to go to medical school or whatnot, but she has years of experience under her belt. Yeah. So.
Okay. So I know people are going to need to get into your program in order to really learn the strategies that you have, but I'm curious, what's the most impactful marketing strategy that your most successful clients have used?
That's a good question. And I think that people tend to think that it's difficult, right? But it's not. The most impactful marketing strategy that my most successful clients have had is believing that they can do it. And then they actually go and they bet on themselves and they do it. Most of them are super scared because they're like, oh my gosh, I've never done anything like this before. I don't know. Does this sound right? Is this right? And I'm like, you're good. You know it. Just put it out there. And so I think that it's the mindset. It's having the confidence to believe in themselves enough to know that, you know what, they're going to stand on what they know. And they're going to go out there and share it because it's not hard. It's literally having the confidence, believing in yourself, and showing up. Even if you show up wrong, show up. It's not going to this is one of the things I shared with Dr. Hylett, because she lives her life on precision because she's a pharmacist. And entrepreneurship is different. So there's had to be some shifts there. She's a farmer. Like, if she's not accurate, someone could get ill, right? Yeah. But in entrepreneurship is different, and this is where I, as a coach, I had to realize, listen, you're not in the pharmacy. You're moving into a different territory. So put yourself out there. Yes, you're going to make mistakes on this road. It's part of the process, and this is how you're going to learn. But done and imperfect is better than not done at all.
That's true. That's true.
And I'll honestly say the other thing is consistency.
Consistency in what way, or in what things?
Consistency, again, in promoting and providing value and letting people know that you exist and you have something to sell. This means that you can't show up one week and promote your book, then disappear and say you're taking a sabbatical for 2 or 3 weeks, and then show up again at the end of the month or the beginning of next month, and then complain about nobody purchased what you have. They're not going to purchase what you have because they don't know you and they don't trust you. When it comes to selling something, selling a product, your book is a product, you have to consider your own buying journey. I'm pretty sure that everyone watching this has gone on Amazon and put stuff in their cart and not checked out. You're going to go browse. Oh, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get this. And it sits in your cart. You might have the intention of buying it. Some things you buy right away. But then there are some things where you just click add to cart and it adds to cart and you don't buy it right away. So what happens? Amazon will begin sending you emails, reminding you of everything that you have in your cart. You're going to get hit with the ads. There's going to be some follow-up. And then every time you go on Amazon, you're going to see it in that cart. So either you're going to go ahead and buy it eventually, or you're going to delete it if you feel like it's not something that you need. So if the same, people are going to do the same thing with you. They're going to say, hey, I want that book. I'm at work right now. I'm going to come back to it later. Oh, I want that book. Texting and driving, or browsing and driving. I want that book. Oh, I'm driving right now. I'm going to do it when I get settled. Then once it gets settled, kids are home, dinner, homework, life happens. So you have to stay in front of people. You have to, and I like what you said, be consistent about what? You have to consistently show up and provide value, letting people know what they're going to learn, giving excerpts from your book, creating videos. Like, you can take one chapter per week and do a video series about it. This isn't where you're talking about or giving away the content, but you can literally talk about each day do a 60-second clip about something that you speak about in each chapter and why it matters to the reader and how your book is a solution to their problem. But you said something, I wanted to have an opportunity to address it.
Of course, please.
You asked me about the 235K launch.
Yes.
Okay. So, so the 235K launch, and I think that this is important for everyone listening, it wasn't 235K in only book sales. However, I used my book to make 235K in sales. And this is why you need a book and back end offers, coaching programs, courses, or consulting, so that once your readers read your book, you lead them to the next step. You have to determine what the next step is. This is why it's not the best thing to just write a book where you're sharing your story, because you can't create a business off of just that. You have to use your story in a way that's going to help someone else and that you'll actually be able to build other offers on. So, so I had Published and Paid, and I talked about this when I taught the class. Published and Paid had not officially been launched yet, but I had written the book a year prior. I wrote the book during the pandemic and I had not released it. And so I used the content into my book that I had not released to create a workshop. And from the workshop, I offered people the opportunity to come and work with me in my coaching programs. And so that's how we used the book to make 200, it ended up being 235K in sales in a week.
So it's not necessarily about selling your books for $100, like, university textbook. It's about how are you going to interweave in, if you're interested in more of this chapter, go to this page on my website. I notice people do that a lot, so that they're clicking downloadables, they're giving you their emails, and eventually you're able to reach out to them directly for other offers, as you mentioned.
Or depending on the type of back-end marketing systems they have set up, you're automatically integrated into the ecosystem. So you don't have to personally, you don't have to personally reach out. They're going to tell you what offers they have, if their back-end systems are set up properly.
And I'm sure you'll teach us how to set up our back-end systems properly. But where can we connect with you after everyone hears this episode? And how can we work with you?
Yeah, so definitely I'm on Instagram at Jasmine, Jasmine, Womack, WOMACK. So come and connect with me on Instagram. I go live 2 to 3 times per week. And I'm constantly putting up tips, strategies, and high value content. My website is JasmineWomack.com.
If you enjoyed my conversation with Jasmine, I want you to know I have over 140 audio podcast episodes you can binge listen to on she'soffscript.com or anywhere else audio podcasts are available. Before you head out, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next episode. I release new ones every Thursday. All right, we'll see you right back here for the next one. Bye.